it's Caitlin from C-SPAN. Did you know that C-SPAN has been serving the American people for 45 years? Since our founding in 1979, C-SPAN has been documenting history with a unique approach, unfiltered, without commentary, and entirely independent from government funding. C-SPAN is funded by fees from our cable and satellite distribution partners. And now, with fewer people subscribing to cable and satellite, we're asking you to help support our next 45. Your contribution helps to ensure that we can continue to provide unfiltered, complete coverage of government proceedings on TV, online, on radio, and our mobile app, as well as context through newsletters, social media, and podcasts. Join us in preserving this legacy of access to the democratic process. Make your tax-deductible donation today at cspan.org/donate. Thank you.
This week, 2024 Campaign Trail takes a look at the latest delegate wins for President Biden and former President Donald Trump, as both men became the presumptive presidential candidates for their parties. Plus, a look from the road at their latest messages to voters. Former President Trump from Rome, Georgia, and President Biden from Goffstown, New Hampshire. Also, a preview of Alaska's at-large House race. But first, a look at the U.S. Senate race in Ohio, where primary voters head to the polls on Tuesday.
Carrie Lee is a correspondent with Spectrum News Ohio. Can you tell us about the upcoming Ohio Senate race? When are folks voting and who's on the ballot?
Well, the Senate race is coming up. The primaries are on March 19th. And right now it is a three-way race in the Republican primary. And it's actually very close. The latest polling numbers show that everyone is within the margin of error. Right now, Bernie Moreno is at the top with 29%. Matt Dolan has 27%. And Frank LaRose has 21% with another 23% undecided. But again, this is within the margin of error. So it could be anyone's race right now.
And there have been a couple of endorsements in this race on the Republican side. Who's gotten those?
Well, the biggest endorsement was, of course, former President Donald Trump, who came out behind businessman Bernie Moreno. This instantly shot him up from polling from the lowest to the highest, and he has used every opportunity to mention that he is endorsed by Trump. And in fact, Trump is coming to Dayton, Ohio this weekend to campaign for Moreno.
And just how potent is the Trump endorsement in Ohio? It's had mixed results in other states, but Ohio is fairly solidly behind the former president.
That's true. Ohio has shifted more conservative in recent years, and I actually have spoken to voters in Ohio. Many Republicans say that Trump's endorsement does hold a lot of weight with them. However, we have seen in the past that Trump has endorsed people who end up going on to lose in the general election. We could see that happening here because the incumbent Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown has a solid standing among Ohioans, and he also doesn't toe the Democratic line. So finding someone who can reach across to the independents could be very helpful to Republicans. Now, Matt Dolan is the candidate who is most likely to appeal to these independent or moderate voters. And in fact, he just received the endorsement of Governor Mike DeWine, and that could boost his prospects.
There's going to be a lot of money pouring into this race. The assumed Democratic nominee, Sherrod Brown, has millions and probably millions more coming. What's it looking like on the Republican side?
Tons of money coming in. Brown himself raised $5.7 million just in the first 2 months of this race. And so far, all three candidates have raised a total of $56 million. And that's just to the candidates. That does not include spending by super PACs. Now, two of the candidates, that would be Matt Dolan and Bernie Moreno, have invested their own money into their campaigns. Meanwhile, Frank LaRose has not invested in his campaigns. He is relying on outside donations. Either way, we see a lot of money coming in, a lot of money spent on attack ads, and you can expect that that will continue even after the primaries.
Now, Spectrum hosted a debate with the GOP candidates a few weeks ago. How would you describe the GOP candidates' styles? How are they appealing to Ohio voters?
Well, all of them are rushing to contend that they are the most conservative and that the other candidates are fake conservatives, even when there isn't much daylight between their stances on various issues. They all have come out forcefully against President Biden's border policies, although they have different ideas on how to combat illegal immigration. They also have had murky stances on abortion, especially because Ohio had a referendum last year in which voters voted to enshrine abortion rights into the state constitution. All three have said they would support federal restrictions on abortion rights. The one thing that does unite them all is that they are trying to unite Biden and Brown. Every time Brown was mentioned in the debate, they always mentioned Biden and Brown's policies. This is because Biden has low favorability ratings in Ohio.
And of those issues, are there any that you expect are really going to resonate with Ohio voters in the general election?
We definitely see that immigration is going to be a major issue, as well as the economy and abortion. Those issues have all come up, and I think they're all very relevant to Ohio as well. What I think you might see in Ohio that wouldn't be in a more national election is the focus on keeping jobs in the region. As a Rust Belt state, they have seen many manufacturing jobs leave in recent decades, and they want to keep expanding programs to bring jobs back into the region.
Harry Lee is a reporter for Spectrum News Ohio. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you.
After we taped this interview, Emerson College released a poll showing Matt Dolan ahead with 26% among GOP voters, ahead of Bernie Moreno's 23% and Frank LaRose with 16%. Nearly a third of Ohio Republicans remain undecided, however. Both President Biden and former President Donald Trump crossed the delegate thresholds in this past Tuesday's primaries. Wins by both candidates in Georgia, Washington State, Mississippi, and Hawaii left them both named the presumptive presidential nominees of their respective parties by the evening's end. Next, part of former President Trump's message to voters last weekend in Rome, Georgia.
But if you're a disillusioned Democrat, of which there are many today, I extend an open hand, an open invitation, and I ask you to join us on the noble quest of saving our country. Saving our country. Together we will turn the page forever on the miserable nightmare of the Biden presidency. What a presidency, what a president. Most incompetent president we've ever had. The worst president, the most incompetent, and the most corrupt. Other than that, I think he's doing actually quite a good job. And we will make America great again. Stupidest people in the history of our country running things. These are stupid people. I'd like to use a more sophisticated word, but, you know, there are some words that just go, these are stupid people. Joe Biden should not be shouting angrily at America. America should be shouting angrily at Joe Biden. And we should be saying, Crooked Joe, you're fired. Get out of here. You're fired. You're incompetent. You're incompetent. Get out of here. You're destroying our nation. Get the hell out of here. And by the way, I have to tell you that, you know, I've done it twice. We did great the first time, 2016. We did much better the second time, like not even close. And it was rigged. It was rigged. But there has never been the spirit that I've seen this time. 2016 was great. 2020 was better, the spirit. But this blows it away. We came in from the airport. We're 15 minutes away. The lines of people standing along the streets coming up to this building are incredible. On November 5th, the curtain closes on Crooked Joe's corrupt reign, and the sun rises on a brand new day for Georgia and for America. But one of the lives that was taken from us was an incredible 22-year-old nursing student right here in Georgia, Laken Riley. Right? Look at the signs. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. happened. 16 days ago, Lakin went out for a morning jog. She was in great shape. She wanted to keep herself that way. And she never came back, never came back. They knew something was wrong. An illegal alien criminal who Joe Biden intentionally released into our country has been, and because he's released tens of thousands of people like this, tens of thousands, because you know they come from jails and they come from mental institutions. He released them into our country. Biden has implemented a formal policy that illegal aliens who intrude into the United States are granted immunity from deportation. Thus, when this monster showed up at our border, he was set free immediately under the program that Crooked Joe created. I call it free to kill. It's free to kill. They just told me prior to what I'm doing right now that Joe Biden went on television and apologized for calling Lakin's murderer an illegal. He didn't want to call him illegal. He apologized. He said he should have called him an undocumented, not an illegal, and he wanted to apologize. He wanted to apologize, and, well, they have a new name, too. They have a new name that's even worse. They have a new name. You know what the new name is? Neighbor. They want to call him Neighbor. They want to call him another name. Did you ever hear the other one? Newcomer. A newcomer to our country. Are we going crazy or what? Is this country going crazy? How about that one? Newcomer. The newcomer. No, he was illegal. And I say he was an illegal alien. He was an illegal immigrant. He was an illegal migrant. And he shouldn't have been in our country, and he never would have been under the Trump policy.
President Biden also hit the campaign trail this week, with stops in a number of states, including this one in New Hampshire on Wednesday.
Look, I'm here in New Hampshire to talk about the budget I released today that would, what I think, help in a big way. As you just heard, Rose, many Americans pay for prescription drugs more money than anywhere in the country. If I got you on Air Force One with me and flew you to Toronto, to Berlin, to London, to Rome, any place in the world, with the same prescription you might have for whatever you need, no matter what it is, and we could, by the same company, you could get it in all those cities. And guess what? It costs you between 40 and 60% less. That's a fact. That's not hyperbole. That's a fact. And it's wrong. And guess what? I've been trying for years and years, the U.S. Senator, to end it, and I'm ending it now. 4 years ago, this week, before I came to office, our country was hit with the biggest, worst pandemic and economic crisis in a century. Remember the anxiety and the fear? Record job losses, raging virus that would take more than 1 million American lives and leave millions of loved ones behind. It was estimated for every one who died, left behind 8 significant people: mother, father, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, an empty chair at the table. The mental health crisis that resulted from the isolation and loneliness. A president, my predecessor, who failed the most basic of any duty a president owes the American people, a duty to care. I believe that's unforgivable. I came to office determined to uphold the duty to care and get us through one of the toughest periods in our nation's history. And we have. Building a future of American possibilities, building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not just the top down. When the middle grows, the bottom has a chance, the poor have an opportunity, and the wealthy still do very well. They still do very well. Investing in all America and all Americans to make sure everyone has a fair shot. We leave nobody behind, nobody. Our plan is working and America is coming back. 4 years later, the pandemic no longer controls our lives. The vaccines that saved us from COVID are now being used to help beat cancer, turning a setback into a comeback. That's the American story. And I believe we're moving into a future where health care is a right, not a privilege in America. That's why. That's why I've never been more optimistic about our future. We just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. Nothing, seriously, not a joke. We're the only country that's ever come out of every crisis stronger than we went in, stronger than we went in. And folks, give you one little example. You know, I may not get it done, but if you give me a Congress, I will. No, I'm serious. I may not get it done, but here's the deal. If you know how much, we have 1,000 billionaires in America. That's not a bad thing, per se. You know what their average tax rate is? 8.2% taxes. Anybody want to trade their tax rate? No, I'm serious. If we just charge them, I had a tax code that charged them 25%, not the highest rate, 25%. You know how much that would raise over the next 10 years? $400 billion. $40 billion a year. Imagine what we could do. From cutting the deficit to providing for child care, to providing health care, to continue to provide our military with all they need. So folks, look, this is not beyond our capacity. We just have to listen. We've got to tell people what we want to do and hope that they've figured out that what is going on with the last guy, if it gets repeated, because if he gets elected, he's publicly stated he'd try to repeal every single thing we've done so far. 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, I go on and on. But people still need help. They still need help. Those people, the folks sitting at the kitchen table, they still need some help on the day-to-day things. And we're going to work on those as well. But at any rate, I'm taking too much of your time. You're very gracious. Thank you all very much for being here. And as my mother would say, God bless you all. Thank you. And God protect our troops.
President Biden and Vice President Harris were both on the road on Thursday, with the commander-in-chief visiting with voters here in Saginaw, Michigan. Meanwhile, the vice president made headlines as the first sitting VP to visit an abortion clinic. It came just days after President Biden talked about women's reproductive rights in his State of the Union address, and weeks into a strategy to highlight the issue from the White House and the campaign trail. Next, part of her visit to a Planned Parenthood location in St. Paul, Minnesota.
When the court took this right away, they created a healthcare crisis in America. So what has happened in so many of these states is these clinics have shut down. And so then I said to the press, and I said, get ready for the words I'm about to use. Uterus, fibroids, pap smears, breast cancer exams. That's part of what these clinics provide. Necessary, vital health care in addition to abortion care. The idea that they are proposing and passing laws that make no exception even for rape or incest. So they're saying to a survivor of a crime of violence to their body, a violation to their body, that they have no right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That's immoral. Immoral. And on the subject overall, I think we all agree, let us all agree, one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. We trust women. We trust women to know what is in their best interest. And today, in some states, we just saw extremists are even attacking the freedom to use IVF treatment. And understand it can happen anywhere. That's an example of it happening. I talked about this when the Dobbs decision was leaked. Let's see where this could end up. So think about it. Women and couples being denied the ability to fulfill their dream of having a child. And consider the irony. So on the one hand, they're saying, you don't have the freedom to end an unwanted pregnancy. And on the other hand, you don't have the freedom to start a family. Consider the irony. And by the way, while these extremists say they are motivated by the well-being of women and children, they are silent on the crisis of maternal mortality. The top 10 states with the highest rates of maternal mortality all have abortion bans. The hypocrisy abounds. And as we know, there is nothing hypothetical about anything we've just discussed. The crisis is real. Since Roe was overturned, I have met women who have had miscarriages in toilets. I have met a woman who went to the emergency room to receive care and was turned away repeatedly because the doctors were afraid that they could go to jail for giving her care, and it wasn't until she developed sepsis. And in this healthcare crisis, let us all recognize who is to blame. The former President Donald Trump handpicked 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would overturn Roe. He intended for them to take your freedoms, and he brags about it. He said that for years, and then I'm going to quote, they were trying to get rid of Roe v. Wade. They're trying to have Roe v. Wade terminated, he said. And then he said, quote, I did it, and I'm proud to have done it. Proud. Proud that women across our nation are suffering. Proud that doctors and nurses could be thrown in prison for administering care. Proud that young people today have fewer rights than their mothers and grandmothers. How dare he? The former president is the architect of a healthcare crisis. And the extremists, well, they're not done. In the United States Congress, extremists tried to pass a national abortion ban to outlaw abortion in every single state. But they need to know is that if Congress passes a national abortion ban, President Joe Biden will veto it. He will veto it. And when we together win majorities in the United States Congress, and Congress passes a bill that reinstates the protections of Roe v. Wade, Joe Biden will sign it into law.
Also new this week, fresh ads from the Biden and Trump campaigns. Next, an ad from the Biden campaign directly addressing the president's age, and a rebuttal ad from the Trump campaign.
Look, I'm not a young guy. That's no secret. But here's the deal. I understand how to get things done for the American people. I led the country through the COVID crisis. Today, we have the strongest economy in the world. I passed a law that lowers prescription drug prices, caps insulin at $35 a month for seniors. For 4 years, Donald Trump tried to pass an infrastructure law, and he failed. I got it done. Now we're rebuilding America. I passed the biggest law in history to combat climate change because our future depends on it. Donald Trump took away the freedom of women to choose. I'm determined to make Roe v. Wade the law of the land again. Donald Trump believes the job of the president is to take care of Donald Trump. I believe the job of the president is to fight for you, the American people, and that's what I'm doing. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Can we do one more take?
Look, I'm very young, energetic, and handsome. What the hell am I doing this for? Look, I'm not a young guy. That's no secret. Anyway.
Matt Buxton is the founder of the Alaska Memo. Matt, tell us about the House of Representatives election in Alaska this year. Is Representative Mary Peltola running again?
Yes. In 2022, the long-term dean of the House, Representative Don Young, passed away unexpectedly. We had a special election in Alaska, which was the first in our state connected with ranked choice voting. She won that. Then she won the general election after that. And then now this term will be her first truly as an incumbent with 2 years under her belt. So.
And how is this election different than the 2022 election where she first won office?
Well, I think the big thing really is that the most obvious thing probably is that Sarah Palin isn't in this race right now. Sarah Palin was in the special election race and in the general election in 2022. We saw there, made for a really interesting experiment, I guess, or very first sort of test case for how ranked choice voting works, which is to say, not a lot of people, even Republicans, really like Sarah Palin all that much. So a lot of people split from her, or either voted, who voted for the third party candidate, Nick Begich, or the third Republican, excuse me, Nick Begich, who looked at the ranked choice voting and said, I'd rather my vote go to Mary Peltola or not go to anybody at all. So there's a really big dynamic there about how the parties were figuring out how ranked choice voting works, how to navigate that system. There was a lot of Republican infighting in 2022. It looks like there might be again this year, but there seemed to be a little more, I guess, stayed, I think, with the quality of their candidates. There's no Sarah Palin quality candidate to really divide people this time around.
And there's two Republicans running this year, correct?
So far, right.
And who are those folks?
So we have Nick Begich. He's the grandson, I believe, of Nick Begich, who was a former U.S. representative, I think nephew to Senator Mark Begich from Alaska. So he's in it again. He's kind of this, he was sort of, I think, viewed a little bit as, he was running against Don Young in 2022, and then kind of floundered, I think, a little bit when it became a more open race. And then now we have also Lieutenant Governor Nancy Dahlstrom, who is a former state representative, former commissioner of the Department of Corrections in Alaska, and has been a lieutenant governor since 2022. So she's and she is sort of viewed, I think, right now as sort of the party favorite, I would say.
Is there a lot of money in this race so far?
For Peltola, yes. According to the latest fundraising totals, she's crossed, I think, over $2 million. The reports of the end of the year are relatively low for both Begich and Dahlstrom. Begich has a decent amount of personal wealth that he has brought in the previous races that might be important here. But so far, Peltola certainly has the fundraising advantage going into this race.
Is a lot of that money coming from out of state, or is this mostly in Alaska donations?
I honestly haven't dug into where the money is coming from right now. But I would assume, I think that this is a race that certainly has a lot of national interest in it. Obviously with how close the U.S. House is, especially, and Mary Peltola has really sort of cast herself as a sort of centrist, who's kind of a problem solver committee, I think, and is sort of reached out. So I think that there's definitely efforts to be bipartisan with it moving forward.
Last cycle covering the race with Mary Peltola and Sarah Palin, it was interesting watching Alaska primary debates and watching the debates throughout there, because there were topical debates that we do not see in the lower 48. Coming to mind was a fisheries debate. Is that something that people are talking about? What are the issues motivating Alaska voters?
It is a huge issue. I think fisheries, Alaska is really on the forefront of climate change. I think that there are communities that, lose 20 to 30 years or 20 to 30 yards of riverbank every year. There's a lot of people are on the forefront of that change, and a lot of it is being felt in the fisheries as far as declining populations of fish, lower returns. And so the question is, how do we kind of adapt to that, I think is sort of the big question that a lot of people have with it. And so especially around resource development issues, kind of finding ways to protect fishing. So everybody, almost everybody fishes in a way, and a lot of people rely on it to fill their freezer. So I think that Senator or Representative Peltola really focused in on that in her election, and I think it really connected. I think it was one of the issues that really kind of broadly connected with Alaskans in that election.
What other issues are motivating voters in Alaska this year?
It'll be interesting. So on the ballot this year, we have ranked choice voting is going to be back up on the ballot via a voter initiative. So that is a big issue. There's going to be a a minimum wage bill on the ballot this year also. But I think really a lot of issues that are facing us are kind of, in a way, issues facing the country a little bit. How do we navigate some of the political divides to find sort of common sense, sort of sensible solutions? Right now in Alaska, I think there's a big debate around how public schools are funded, how they're run. There's sort of been this long running flat funding issue here. And so even though it's really kind of largely a state issue, I think that the sort of policies and infrastructure policies that the federal government can affect that can help us out in our sort of tough budget situations and energy situations are huge. So I think in addition to education, energy is always going to be a big issue. Alaska has a ton of resources, but the cost of energy in Alaska is always very high. So we're a small market, so there's a lot of issues there. Infrastructure is another big issue. We love our roads. We love our, infrastructure projects. And the more that the delegation can bring home for it, the better. So
Matt Buxton is the founder of the Alaska Memo. You can read his work at akmemo.com. Matt, thank you for your time and expertise.
Yeah, thank you so much.
A reminder, this program and all of C-SPAN's campaign 2024 coverage can be found online at cspan.org/campaign.